have all these contracts here, so, and if everything's approved, then have you sign the back of them?
Call the meeting to order. Does not look like we have any citizens or citizen input or delegations, so I guess we'll go right to the agenda. We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carried. Minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
We have a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second? And a second. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carried. Financial reports. Is there anything you want to point out, Kevin?
Yeah, I just backed out of the meeting again. One thing that kind of sticks out as far as the finances and a payment on something was to Sears for a bill for about $23,000 before I get back into it. And that was for work that was done on the roof and leading up to the roof at the arena. It was fixing the snow guards as they come over the penetration points, the vents that come out of the furnaces, and then a safety ladder which is enclosed on the outside leading up to that. So if anybody sees that large bill, they know what it is. Other stuff is pretty much ordinary.
Is there any further questions? If there are no questions, can we get a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve?
I'll second.
And a second? Standing, assuming?
Which says I was not on it.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carried. Department reports. I'm going to change this up a little bit instead of having them read. We'll have them, if there's anything they want to point out, we'll let them point it out and then we'll approve them. Or I guess we don't really have to approve them. Ask questions. So go ahead and start with.
Only thing I need to point out, if you didn't know, the State Special Olympics basketball tournament's going to be here in Mitchell this weekend. And because of the impending weather, they are canceling Sunday and just doing a one-day tournament on Saturday. No opening ceremonies or anything. They're just going to try and get the games done and over with. And so if anybody's coming out, they're just going on Saturday, so.
I had a question for you. When you rent out that gym, does that revenue come to the parks or does that go to the school?
Like for the,
Front gym there?
Front, that comes to us. Yep. Because we have it after 3:15 every day during the week and on weekends. So that comes, yep, that comes to us. Yep,
Okay. I always kind of wondered about money.
yep.
Should explain that utility bill on that too.
So it's kind of weird. So they, on the old half, I should say, of the rec center, and the school, they're kind of joined with the utilities. And so we pay 18% of their bill that they get over there. And then I think it's like $40 for hot water. So that's basically what we do. And then we get another bill for the rest of the building and the pool and stuff, so, yeah.
Any other questions for Kevin? Steve?
Okay, just want to point out that we finished taking down all of our dead boulevard trees and trees in the parks that had to come out. High school tennis has started, and we started on the playground at Patton Young Park by tearing out all the old equipment, taking the sand out, and just today started digging holes for the new equipment.
When do you think he'll be done?
It all depends on the weather, and we're getting to spring when it's our busiest time. You know, I was kind of hesitant to start it in the spring because usually we don't do it, but we had such an open spring so far, we figured we'd give it a try. So, but when we got to get shelters up and running, work at the pool, that type of stuff, that's all going to come first. So,
I just didn't know how big of a project this is, something that's going to take.
yeah, a couple months, you know, for sure.
And then there's the timing of the contractor to put in the mat underneath the
Yep,
the
yep.
surface.
There's some concrete work and the rubber surfacing that a contractor has to do.
No further questions? I guess we have Jeremy here to point out anything. I don't know if you want to ask our questions to Kevin, or you want to?
Steve, I had pointed out last month, or earlier this month, something that did happen last month was the damage that was done to that shed along the lake. Was that substantial? I didn't even get a chance to visit with you on that.
No, they just kicked the door in again on that, so door latch, basically.
That, and I've been spending a considerable amount of time working on a rental agreement for use of the pontoon boat. Along with Justin, he laid out a framework for it, so now we're laying out the details between Angel and I and Steve. We have a meeting tomorrow on that.
So I have a couple questions on your report. One, for the press box, you said that you had to lower the windows, or the lower arrays. Well, you changed.
And what it
Who's
was,
responsible for the cost?
and it was actually a savings based upon what they were able to do, so they ended up reimbursing.
Okay.
And so it won't cost anything. But from where they sit in the press box, they weren't able to see basically from almost the plates back to home plate again, or the bases third and first, all the way back. So it involved doing this, and it wasn't set up the same way as what they originally had with the old windows. So change was made.
And then you had the fire sprinklers were leaking at the ice arena.
And it was more so, I wish Jeremy was here to explain that portion of it. They're not charged with water to start with. There's a condensation that's in there.
Yep.
So there was an air leak in there in terms of what was there, so that will get replaced this year. It's been budgeted.
Was that the spot Eric Savers talked about at the hockey?
Yep.
Anyone else have questions, Mr. Nelson? I don't know if I should ask you this, or it's going to be a Jeremy question, but one of the things on these contracts we have coming up, I have a couple kind of questions overall. Like one is, a couple of them, like the baseball one, for example, says it auto renews in February. So why are we bringing that up in March? You know, it seems like it should have been a little earlier. You know, January, 'cause it says if we don't bring it up 30 days beforehand, it auto renews.
Good question.
I can actually answer that question. Jeremy was prepared to bring these to you sooner, but then he had 2 deaths in his family. His father and his grandmother passed away, and so he's been down to Idaho quite a bit. Montana,
Just
so-
scheduling this year.
Yep.
Thank you, Angel.
Then another question kind of about them was, a couple of them require like proof of insurance. Do we collect that from every, is that turned in with the contract, or do we keep,
Yeah, it's mailed in.
do we have those for every group? Okay. It was just, yeah. That's fine. That's all I really have. Anyone else? We can move on to the concessions facility agreement, I guess.
Jeremy actually sent me notes regarding each of the contracts and anything that's there. So we're on concessions, his notes were that it was just a change from 330 to 350 regarding that contract. All the other wording remains the same. If that's the one for the facility and not the stadium.
Is there any questions about the contract? If not, can we get a motion to approve?
I'll motion to approve contract for concessions.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve the contract for concessions for 2024. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carried. Next one is the stadium operation agreement, concessions at the stadium, sorry.
It's okay. No change in this one.
No questions, can I get a motion to approve? The question was, who will be in charge of it this year?
Still seeking somebody to be in charge of that in terms of who will run it. Last I had heard anyhow. Jeremy did not provide me with an update on that.
Any further questions? All those, I guess I need a motion. We have a motion to approve the concession stadium agreement.
I'll second that.
In a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carried. Next is the Mitchell baseball agreement.
As noted here in his notes, changed from $12 to $13 on players for 12 and under. For players 13 and older, it's from $22 to $23. Game fee from $36 to $37 per field per day. And lights from $37 to $38 per hour.
There's no questions. Can we get a motion to approve?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve the facility use agreement for Mitchell baseball. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carried. Facility agreement for softball 2024.
Well, I minimized it all the way. Players' fee changed from $12 to $13 for players 12 and under. For players 13 and older, went from $22 to $23. Game fee from $36 to $37 per field per day. And lights, $22 to $23 per hour. And if somebody looks at that and says, why the difference in fees for lights between the two fields? Remember the baseball field, you're talking about a larger stadium, more electricity.
I'll motion to approve the agreement for softball.
A second.
Second.
Is there any questions before we vote? Okay. All those in favor of approving the facility use agreement for softball 2024? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Facility use agreement for the travel teams. This is the fee changes, right?
Same changes as what were in place for softball.
No questions, can I have a motion? There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the facility use agreement for the travel teams 2024. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say no. Motion carried. And we have the facility use agreement for soccer.
Making certain I have the right one pulled up. You got it. Change from 12 to 13 for players 12 and under, 22 to $23 for 13 and older. Game fee 50 to 55 per field per day, and lights $22 to $23 per hour.
If I remember right, the jump in cost was due to paint, correct? Paint fields.
Good memory.
I move to approve the Soccer Association.
Second.
A second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the Mitchell Soccer Association Facility Agreement for 2024. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carried. Next is discussion of possible names for the Lakeside use area.
Thank you for your patience with this. All right, now if I can maintain holding open this one, they're both internet documents, so we'll see how this works. So the first one is this turnaround basically off the corner of 23rd and Main Street or Highway 37, and it's right next to the substation. Campground Bay has been the official name of that entire south end of the bay, according to Joe Kippis. That small corner east of the access had been known as Nora's Bay when Joe was a kid, and there was a woman named Nora who had lived on that corner just east of the now substation, that private property where the trail kind of runs through the property. So in discussion with him, we had discussed it being Campground Bay, and Steve's group didn't come up with a disagreement on that one, or did they have something different that wasn't noted in our meeting?
Are you looking for from us just a discussion or approval? Or?
Basically, discussion and kind of a check mark next to this that we would bring that for approval for next month.
Sounds good to me. I think that's it.
The next one was the amphitheater. And really, it kind of is self-explanatory, except if somebody doesn't know what that word means. And I can say as a young adult or a kid, I wouldn't have known what that was. But I can't think of what a better name for that would be other than the sledding hill, but there could be many sledding hills. So amphitheater, in my mind, would be something that we would suggest as far as the group here.
So I've always known it as, and gives them.
And I walked this all last night, not just to familiarize myself with it, but I was out walking the dog. Nice and dry right now. The last time I walked it, it was muddy, which you bikers probably like.
No, we don't like it.
That's trails.
A little slick. So we have consensus on a name for this then, it being the amphitheater? Turnaround on Indian Village Road. This is it, but just to give you a reference point of where we are, there are 2 parking lots next to Indian Village, here and here. This has been used as an overflow, although I don't think officially it's ever been plowed for any of their events. Correct, Steve? So right now, there is an approach coming in here. We discussed as staff, maybe cabling it off and just saying allowing it to go back to the natural area again. Less maintenance. Comments, concerns?
Do they have any concerns about that at the Indian Village? Do they think they need it for overflow for anything? Do they have events out there that are big enough to?
Guess we haven't talked to them about it, but I guess, I don't know if I've ever seen any cars parked in there.
I've never seen cars parked out
Only
there.
time I've ever seen is around the 4th of July.
Yeah.
Few people. And I don't know if we really want to encourage that spot.
Yeah.
If you'd like me to reach out, I can.
I don't know if we're going to change the use, you just have to.
I should. So now we wouldn't get a name anymore?
It wouldn't,
Right. 'Cause it's nothing.
we joked in-house about it being Indian Village parking lot number 3, but really, we don't want to associate it as being part of Indian Village because it's not.
Right.
We can move on. I'll do the visit and come back next month with information. I'll try not to zoom in and out so much, people won't get dizzy. Next is this lot. This is coming off from Indian Village over here. This is the Sportsman's Club dock and landing. So the parking lot right here is what we were discussing, putting a name on. Sportsman's Dock overflow was suggested by Joe Kippis. Staff didn't agree or disagree, or
We really didn't have a name for it, but if they, means that they're filling it in between the two, would it just become part of the Sportsman's Dock area? You know, it's only other,
there won't be a road to access one side to the other, Steve.
yeah.
It'll loop through here. This will be paved. There's the intention by that group to put another 16 by 20 shelter over here, which would be paid for by a group, not our department or the city. But they would remain separate. Do you see a need to have a name on it? What do you describe it as when somebody goes out there to mow?
The access slot just northwest of the Indian Village. You know, that's why we're trying to find names for this stuff, because they try to give directions of where they're at, and
I don't think anybody's gonna argue going in Sportsman's overflow.
yeah.
Like that, for one reason.
Well, I think, I mean, everyone knows we're sportsmen. Well, I shouldn't say everyone, more, most people. So it'd be good.
So we've kind of got a consensus on that, but let me jump ahead to this next one, just so you can see what the little bit of a concern is here. And Angel has made this very clear to me more than once. This is a sportsman's club. Over here is the Pheasants Forever shelter and grounds, and they're separated by a fence. So when you rent this, you don't have access to the whole grounds over here. And some people, when they rented this for a wedding at one time, thought they had access to this, and somebody pulled up over here with a boat and had a fit because they were out here taking pictures for their wedding, and they thought they had the entire grounds. But they are separate, so if we call this, and everybody knows it is Sportsman's Club Landing, and if and an overflow over here. So how would you, it's from here to here, and they're both called Sportsman's Club, not the Pheasants Forever landing. I'm not suggesting we change the name of the,
I just always
The launch
assumed it
and
was one big area, and you have the dock or dairy fish farm.
When Pheasants Forever came to the city with a proposal for that shelter, they entered into an agreement with the city that they would build and pay for the shelter, but that it would be open to the public and non-rentable. They wanted it open to the public. And then the city was to put in the concrete and then the boat, the fishing pier. So Pheasants Forever intention was that not to be part of the Sportsman's Club, just to be something so that people could come out, have their picnics, enjoy the area, you know, that kind of stuff. It was.
A sidewalk, isn't it, it's where you go to that?
Yes, there is. Yep, you can go on that sidewalk, you can see it there, and it goes all the way to this, that was
See what
what,
they think is part of it.
yep,
That's the agreement. I'm assuming the rental agreement says specifically you're only getting the shelter and
yep.
what you.
And anybody that rents a Sportsman's Club, when they come in to pick up the key, they are told by me what the area has, or if anybody calls with questions. So anybody that rents it that says that they didn't know, that's not true. Because if they come to me to get the key, they do know.
But if it's a public area, how are you, like, why are you prohibiting them from using the public?
Well, what it is when people rent the Sportsman's Club, what they're trying to do is they're trying to encompass that whole area, and they don't want anybody walking, biking, anything through there. Just like when they rent the shelter, they can ask anybody that goes through there except for on a trail, like if somebody pulls up and wants to use playground equipment, they have the right to go out and say, hey, we paid for the shelter, and can you please, you know, vacate, so.
and they have the fenced-in area
Yeah,
here, is it?
and it's all,
the
and
building.
that's the purpose of the fence, is to have the defining marker as to what is. Just like at Camp Arroyo, if you notice when you go out to Camp Arroyo, you have that fence that goes across the road where you can just walk through. That was the purpose. Anything inside that fence is what you're renting, and then once you get to that opening to go through, that's public. So it's not part of your
We
rental.
had the band boat thing. I mean, I can tell you, no one cared that we had the Sportsman's Club rented. That was full of people.
When it comes to restroom use, that's why the sidewalk will be between here and here. But, so the outside access for the restroom is open for them to use at this point, but they wouldn't be able to go inside if it was rented for an event, if they're locked from the outside.
No, we tried that a couple years back, having the restrooms open to the public for anybody to use, but then we get people that would destroy the bathrooms, make a mess in them, and then when we got the renters in there, and they were not happy because the restrooms were a mess, so we haven't done that for a couple years.
But there is bathrooms over at the boat docks, correct? Or the porta or something.
Porta pot.
The intention by a donor is to put one. I'm waiting for the map to pull back up again. And we can't absolutely commit this donor to this, but would be in this vicinity. So, Pheasants Forever. Shelter and grounds.
I guess to me on that one, it's still the Sportsman.
Well, you do have
Yep.
different names though, right? One's the Sportsman's Club, the other one's Sportsman's Dock. I mean, they're
Right.
different.
So we aren't even naming the Sportsman's Club, that's already named. It's just, this is areas that were not named.
Yeah.
So if we have somewhat of a consensus on that, that's what we've been calling it in-house. It just hasn't had a name.
Are you gonna put up signs for all that?
Signs, and they will have to have on them the City of Mitchell logo on them, indicating what it's for, that it's public access. And as I talked to Joe about this one, he said they had named it, or just talked about it being Kippis Bay South Side. And a name that kind of sticks with us is, and that's not an official name for it, but this was all owned by the Kippis family at one time, is my understanding. Turtle Trail Park. Because that's Turtle Trail that goes through here, even though one sign has been taken.
That's what my kids have always called it, it's a trail sign in the back, we always catch more turtles and fish right there.
Imagine it should stay Turtle Trail, everybody knows about it.
And I don't know if this ever had an official name. There's not been a sign on it to my knowledge, but staff have called it Kippis Cove. We suggested calling it the same.
Is there any confusion with the street of the same name?
There's a Kippis Cove Street.
Isn't there?
Just by the cemetery, right?
Yep.
There's that little, like by the flags and everything there. Just west of them. Here.
I think most people know that as Kisco Memorial.
It's just called Kippis Park then. Kippis Park. Gold mine, it's a gold mine.
The street name's Kips Cove there.
I don't care, I just
Well, I
thought
think
I'd
you have
point
a
it
valid
out.
point, that we have a street named that, and then a park, you know, there's,
Thank you.
I like,
Kippis Park would be good too.
park.
We just named something across the bay, or potentially naming something across the bay a park, and it doesn't have playground equipment in it. And so naming this a park as well makes sense. Thank you for your patience on this. It's faster than driving the bus, though. So this little lot and area, as when Joe was a kid, they said they called it Johnson's Bay. So really, it's naming something for the people who come and maintain this area.
I didn't realize that was a public area till now.
Yep, this lot is.
I've never seen anyone use that.
Is there even a sign up that says public access on it, Steve?
There should be. Yeah.
We can think on that one, or
You guys follow something?
Thompson's Bay is as good as anything I can.
Yeah.
yeah, lot next to Colin Kierkegaard. That's- I know it's kind of naming the bay and not naming the property, but the city property does go into the bay. Here was the one that was a question mark on why it didn't get auctioned off, and you can see based upon what the structure is with the county right now, it doesn't have enough property going out to build upon it. So that's why it wasn't sold off. I think it's going to get redone at some point, but I had suggested on the sheet on here just calling it 115 because it's 115 South Harmon, that it might be sufficient to do that. If somebody has a different name for that, that's fine. Different suggestion.
Sounds like it'll be a temporary name.
I would, I would venture to guess. You could even spell out the words 115. Or make it like a 1:15. That'd be confusing though. And the neighborhood put a sign up on this place that indicates North Olman access, but I don't believe it's a city sign. I stood there during the boat parade last year.
I was just told the park at the end of Olman.
And there's a volunteer group besides Steve's crew that does a very nice job of keeping that clean.
I think North Olman's pretty descriptive.
That's the end of Olman, so yes. This is Franks Bay. My understanding was Frank's Bait Shop used to be here, and it may have even been sitting on city property at one time. That's the story I was told. May have been. So what we're looking at, possibly naming this loop here. Steve's crew has just been calling it the Franks Bay Lot Turnaround. Anybody have any problem with that?
What,
Evidently, there used to be a steps in here. It was called Steps Beach at one time, and if the water level ever gets lowered and stays lower, there'd be a very nice beach in here again. But sorry, I cut you off.
I was just trying to, no, I'm thinking the next area, I think, where the axe, the
Yep,
road for
the west
dredging and
access,
everything.
yep. That's what gets confusing for staff as well. There's just so many places. What's neat about this one is once again, if they would get left lower as far as the water level, and you've got a marina and jetty right here, a little beach is within walking distance of that marina. Are we okay with actually officially putting a name on it saying Franks Bay Turnaround? Okay. Next one is West End Boat Launch, same. Do we have a name on it saying West End Boat Launch, Steve?
I'm not for sure. For the, down by the boat ramp itself, I think there's something that says West End Dock on it, but been by there so much, I'm not even for sure.
Okay. So we assume we're okay in putting a sign out near the road saying West End Boat Launch there. There was confusion in the wording here to Steve as I sent this to him about cabin loop. While on one piece of paper or two pieces of paper that are hanging on my wall, it shows proposed cabins, something that's not proposed to happen anymore. But because that's on my wall, I said what was proposed to have been the cabin loop, and then name it something else. But what we came up with was possibly, since it's a part of Fire Steel Park, Fire Steel Loop, or Fire Steel Park Loop. And it's this. Concerns? Questions? Head nodding, head shaking?
Sounds good.
Okay, we'll keep it moving. And if anybody's been out here and noticed anything going on as far as skid loaders and things, they're working on some trails down in here, is my understanding.
Actually, they put the water line in.
That's what the construction was going on.
Yeah, and we did rebuild the trail, but we didn't have any loaders or,
Okay.
we just had a weed eater. And a chainsaw. We do need a load, probably something else to do there, it's rough, but
So,
the trail is back in and the water line is being put in.
okay. That's the communication piece between one department in the city and another. Somebody came in and said to me, I see that road's already going in. I said, no, the road would be part of the whole vote project that's going on in June, or the vote proposal that's going on in June. So there's no road if this project doesn't happen as far as the dredge.
Water line's going in though.
Okay, thank you.
It's fine.
It did.
I can see the confusion though, because they did make it wide enough to. So,
Lions Point Park is actually just a small area on the west end. And you're going to have to correct me if I'm overdrawing this, but I believe it's the area in here. Do you know it is wider than that, Steve? Like in this whole point area, or is it contained to this?
I think it just contained to what's mowed in the parking lot there is what we refer to as Lions Point Park.
Okay. What do you call the rest of it?
Don't really have a name for it.
The area behind Lions Point Park?
Is there no name to the point that everybody drives down, Whitney Point?
There's a sign that says Windy Point on it
Is there?
already.
The
Yep.
sign was,
I didn't know if it was
It,
officially-
that could be gone too again.
it is, the sign was taken.
Oh, it's stolen.
Yep. So what I had implied was that perhaps this needed a name, but really it's the end of Firesteel Park, west end. Funny how the map says none. None Park. That wouldn't be good,
Nothing there, this is mobile, right?
right? If you have no concerns about needing to name something like this, Steve,
I don't think that area we really would have to get a name for it. There's not much that we do there but mow the ditch line.
Only that one garbage can.
Yeah, in that parking area, was put there so people can access the lake there in the wintertime.
I see a lot of people park and ride from there. No reason, I guess.
now we're moving up into here. Joe had indicated this had been known as Delta Point and Sand Point, and staff kind of know it as Cattail Point. Little Italy? Cowboy Boot Point?
Put the word cattails with it isn't that, 'cause it's very descriptive of where it is.
Yep.
It goes like cattail.
your staff would be happy with that, Steve. That their name's stuck. Got just a few left. Thanks for your patience. For those who aren't familiar, this is where the new detention pond went in. And there's kind of a pit that drains through a line that goes down here and then eventually goes down to the lake. But it's stormwater from north of here. There is a service road right here which had no name. I did not talk to engineering yet to see if they're going to need that for maintaining this. I don't know that they would. Steve and I discussed with engineering, will a fence be needed? And there's concern that perhaps trucks will drive down there through or four-wheelers will and mud it up when it's all finally grown with grass. But it was indicated that they can cable it off, which will be far more attractive to the people across the road. It'll keep vehicles out, and this won't be a catch point for garbage and leaves and everything else blowing across the street. But we had discussed naming this or else just removing it if engineering didn't need it. And it probably isn't even a major concern. Questions, comments before I move on? Yep, this is Sandy Beach down here. Well, I don't know if anybody's even been down this one. I've been down it a few times. It's actually blacktopped. It's kind of chewed up in here because it's pretty steep. And there's a sign over here that says no horses on trail. So I joked with staff. I said, maybe we should call it no horse trail lot or no horse trail turnaround. They didn't like it, so they suggested north side turnaround or whitetail turnaround, or to close off the area. Because
Yeah,
there?
there's a lot of walkers and sometimes fishermen, I
I've seen
think.
some people fishing more.
Okay. And that's close to the channel, so I can understand where people would want to fish off that whole area down there.
I like the whitetail turn.
Yeah.
And they named it that because they spot deer down there from time to time. Or they suggested naming it that. And the last one on my list is Redstone. And it seems people know it as that. You're going to have to stop me when I get close to it, Steve.
You got a ways to go.
And they did do quite a bit of maintenance as far as cleanup with brush along here this going into fall and maybe even into the winter. It was closing in on the stairway going down, and there were a couple of dead trees down in here too, but they cleaned it up. Redstone is a suggestion that to just continue on with that name, but I don't think it's ever had a sign on it.
So I've heard it called.
Been there, but never been.
Looks like we have a lot of head nodding with that one. The last one was a spillway. We don't think that we actually need to name a spillway, but if anybody would suggest otherwise that we need to, it might be a thing like amphitheater where people don't know what that means. Yeah. On a side note, had a conversation with a guy who's the construction company that's going to be working on 37. They were looking for a place to park their office, their portable office, and wondered about our campground. We told them, no, but thanks for thinking of us. Said that's a one-way road going through there, and it does get pretty heavy with use over the summer months, so we don't want a portable office with trucks coming and going, and maybe somebody not making the full loop as they're going to that office, and so. And I asked Steve about why not out here in the parking lot. He said that gets very full too during our holiday weekends, to where even the overflow is full. That's actually going to be used by a local construction company. And we talked about that. I did with engineering, and I suggested to him going to the drive-in theater. That's been used before for that purpose. So, and he was glad to take the name and number, and he was contacting him yesterday.
Is that everything?
That's everything.
All right, the only other item I have on the agenda is to set the next meeting date. I have April 11th. Not hearing any complaints, so I'll set it as April 11th, 6 PM. Thanks, meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
So I signed, I'm sorry, you're sorry.
Nope, you're fine.
I signed the ones that have action in the agreement.
Yep.
So
And then the other
It's
ones.
not fall. These ones I just don't know. Oh,
Yeah. Like-
Concessions and we'll talk, like,
Yeah, because we don't know who's going to be running them yet, and he's having the meeting, that's why Jeremy wasn't here tonight, he's having a meeting with all the traveling teams. So he took 15 contracts with them, so then as they come in, yeah, and I'll wait until I get a few months to have you run over from her too. Yeah. You have to. Uh-huh.
so the insurance question came about because someone brought up at the baseball meeting, so I have to buy insurance, and it seems like surprised, and I was just kind of wondering if the group's actually turned it in.
Yeah, and then, no, they mail it in and it goes to Liz Kitchen and Human Resources, and then she has a binder, so that way all the insurance, yep, so if somebody comes in and, you know, they can take a look at it, so yeah.
I was just, they seemed, well, how it was presented to me is they were surprised that the whole board was surprised.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think that's what the contract's covered. That's why I asked that one, you know, just wanted to the process was.
Yeah, yeah, usually they'll mail them in and most of the time they'll come to me and then I just take them over to Liz, or if they, you know, come straight in and Liz will go around and she'll, unless it specifies, you know, like that it's, you know, for a certain thing, and she'll walk around to the offices and say, okay, you know, whose does this belong to, so that she can make record of it and stuff, so, yeah.
That's hard, so it's just kind of wondering about.
It looks great now.
Yeah, and just like all of these, you know, contracts, once they get signed by both parties, then I keep the original in my office, but then we have a copy of all the stuff that goes down to the finance office. That way anybody can walk in and, you know, open record type of thing, so, yeah.
I'll let you ask some questions along.
Sorry for being late. My apologies.
Make it short in the meetings, then you almost get.